Hello again guys, welcome back. Thank you all again for the support on my last video, and today we're going to carry on with my series of videos on young adult and teen literature in 2015 and the future. So today we're going to look at film adaptations. Now, teen and young adult literature has succeeded in this area more than probably any other genre in the past few years. Starting with things like the Twilight series, things have really exploded now, so we've got multimedia franchises like the Hunger Games, the Insurgents and Divergent series, the Mortal Instruments series, and so many others that are really making big waves in film adaptations. That being said, some of the new franchises released haven't been as successful as expected. If you look at things like the Mortal Instruments film, the Beautiful Creatures film, and even to a lesser extent the Maze Runner film, none of them quite lived up to the hype expected and haven't reached the levels of success the Hunger Games has. Especially with the Hunger Games final film releasing this year, there's going to be a big void in teen and young adult adaptations to really succeed. The Divergent film series did do really quite well and will fill at least part of that void, but there is going to be a big gap left open for a new franchise to really make an impact. Of course, there's no shortage of teen literature that would love to have the opportunity to step up and fill the gap left by the Hunger Games. And today we're going to look at some of the film adaptations that have already been confirmed and consider which of those is the most likely to replace the Hunger Games and be the next big thing. So one of the film adaptations that I'm most excited about is this, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs. Initially this was a horror title, not a young adult title, but it succeeded so well with that market that I can imagine the film announced will be much more teen and young adult orientated than a full-scale horror film. One of the most ingenious things about this book is the style and tone of it. It's a very dark, vintage style book, and it very cleverly uses some rather creepy vintage photographs along the lines of these. They're all photographs that the authors just revealed were found at auctions or in people's basements and attics that have just been reappropriated to really accent the goings-on in the book and to really make some of the characters extra creepy. It's really cleverly done, but what leaves me with a bit of nervousness is that if they don't get the style of the film spot on, it's going to ruin the book completely. It is going to be directed by Tim Burton, which is an incredible choice, and I think he could do an exceptional job of really bringing this book to life in the right way. And I think that this could be a book that really inspires a new trend of slightly creepy, horrifying young adult literature, and that also could be one of those massive franchises that could fill the gap of the Hunger Games. My only concern is that the horror element may put off some otherwise interested viewers. So the second film adaptation I'm really looking forward to is the Chaos Walking Trilogy by Patrick Ness. It's a slightly older series, and what I'm really excited about is that it's a very different style to a lot of other teen and young adult film adaptations. Rather than being dystopian, post-apocalyptic, or any sort of real, this is actually a firmly fantasy book with alien species and loads of out there, wacky, completely unrealistic ideas, and that's what I think could really make this stand out. It's an excellent trilogy. They're all quite chunky books, but it's a really, really good trilogy with tons of brilliant characters that you really get invested in and really just want to carry on reading. And I think if they do the films just right, that could capture the same excitement and really, really make waves in teen and young adult literature and teen and young adult films. This one's only been confirmed as converted to a film in the past year or so, so there's no estimated date for its release yet, but it's definitely one to keep an eye out for when it gets announced. Another old series due to get a film adaptation soon is the Scott Westerfeld Uglies series. So this is a much more standard dystopian film series. It combines aspects of the Divergent series and the Hunger Games series. The basic concept is that whenever a child reaches 16, they undergo extreme plastic surgery to become pretty. The main character, Standard, decides that this path is not right for them and essentially rebels against the system and becomes an ugly. From there, it's a standard plot of revolution and overthrow, but what's really good about it is that it fits a lot with a lot of issues teens are facing. It deals with issues of growing up, of change, of the value of appearance, and I think that is part of the reason that could make it really interesting. It has got these fantastical dystopian elements, but the other hand, it is so relatable and combines such serious and important issues that I think it could strike the perfect balance and really hit a fantastic chord that appeals to a lot of people. It's been in development for a lot of years now, and it's been announced and then unannounced and then announced, and the most recent rumours suggest that it is again on the cards, and I think it was one that, if it does ever actually make it to release, could do really well because of its unique combination of fantasy and realness. So the next film adaptation is actually one I'm really nervous about. It's Sally Green's Half Bad. So this was released last year and had a lot of fanfare as a debut. Myself and loads of my colleagues read it and we loved it. It reminds everybody a lot of Harry Potter. The main character is the child of a white witch and a black witch, and he has to pick which path to follow. Essentially, he's an ally to neither and an enemy to both, and it deals with so many issues of identity. It's got LGBT issues in it, it covers issues of abandonment, and it's a really interesting book that combines a lot of unique elements, and the fact it harkens back to Harry Potter in so many ways will do it really well. My concern is that the film adaptation will either be too much like Harry Potter or try and be too distinctive. It is completely separate, but it uses so many of the same motifs and the same style that I think if it plays up on that a little bit, it could really appeal to the same mass market Harry Potter does. If the rest of the series carries on as well as this, I'm optimistic that could be a brilliant film adaptation. So the next one's actually a book that I talked about in my last video. It's The Fire Sermon by Francesca Haig. So this is a new debut coming out this year. If you want a bit longer description and synopsis, look at my last video. I'll go into quite a lot of detail about what the plot's going to be. But it is a dystopian novel that calls to mind things like the Divergent series, but it does stand out quite a lot more. From what I've read so far, it's a really enjoyable writing style, and there are some really unique concepts in there about family and essentially twins that I think could really make this stand out. And stylistically, as you can tell from the cover, it's a very interesting book, and I think if the film captures the style of the cover and the content in the right way, that could really be a massive book that crosses both the boundaries of teen and adult interest. So I'm intrigued to see how that one goes, A, when it's released as a book, and B, when the film that it's already been optioned for is released in a couple of years. So the last film adaptation I want to talk about is actually the only one releasing this year. It's Fallen by Lauren Kate. I won't deny, this is not my cup of tea in the slightest. It harkens back to things like Twilight and fits into the same modern category as things like Beautiful Creatures and the Mortal Instruments series. It's a gothic fantasy romance novel, and we haven't had anything released as a film that's been that successful in this genre for quite a while, since Twilight essentially. And I think that there's been a bit of time for the market and the interest to die down and then resurge, and I think this book did quite well when it was released anyway, and I think it has got that kind of appeal and freshness for this time that could really help it succeed. The other hand, I know a lot of my generation are really off-put by Twilight, and many of the slightly younger age just don't have the same connection and interest that people had when the Twilight film came out. So I'm concerned that it might miss the mark a little bit. But I think it's one worth watching because A, it's due to come out soon, so we know this one will be released. And B, I think if done right, it could have a real big impact in the world of film and be the next big franchise. So there we have it. That's my picks of what could be the next big teen and young adult franchise to be made into a film. We've seen time and time again that there'll always be one standout franchise that really hits the big time, whether it's Hunger Games or Twilight or Harry Potter before it, and I think one of the 6 books I've mentioned before is likely to be the next big thing. If you think there's anything I've missed out, which I'm sure there's plenty, please let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear what you guys think about what could be the next film adaptation. Other than that, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe. My audience has really grown recently and I'd love to carry on growing to more people. My Goodreads and Twitter handles are also in the description down below, so follow or friend me on there if you'd like to. Other than that, thanks again for watching, and I'll be back soon with my other video on whether dystopian fiction will continue to rule young adults literature in 2015.